heard of ABLE accounts before? Yes. Does anyone have an ABLE account? Okay. So the ABLE accounts actually got started, a group of parents in Northern Virginia in 2005 who were members of the Down Syndrome Association. I was one of them. Sat around a kitchen table, and we were trying to brainstorm what we could do to make things better for our kids. And one of our dads had 2 daughters, one with Down syndrome, one without. And he said, my daughter who doesn't have Down syndrome has a 529 savings account. We're planning for her to go to college. But my daughter with Down syndrome, I don't know what her needs are going to be as she gets older. Maybe she'll go to college, but maybe she'll need help with housing, or she'll need help with employment. He goes, I just don't know what she's going to need. I need more flexibility, but I can't save for her without jeopardizing Medicaid and SSI benefits. And there really should be a way that we could save for all of our kids equally. So that's how ABLE got started. It was just a group of us parents saying, this isn't right, we need to change it. I had a contact, I used to work on Capitol Hill for Congressman McCollum, who represented Orlando for over 20 years. I had been his legislative director. He had retired, I had gone and had my kids. And after my son was born and we got this going, I contacted a friend of mine who worked for Congressman Andrew Crenshaw out of Jacksonville, and I said, we have this crazy idea, and we want to be able to save for our kids who have disabilities. And he goes, I can't believe you guys can't do that already. So that's how it got started. It took us about 10 years working through Congress, but when it passed in 2014, it was the most widely supported piece of legislation. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, across the board. Not only the Down Syndrome Associations, Autism Society, UCP, ARC, National, anybody and everybody who had a stake in kind of the disability community had come on board and all helped to contribute to make it what we as family members and individuals knew it needed to be. So, that being said, Florida was the 4th state to actually pass legislation so that we could open ABLE accounts. And in Florida, the ABLE accounts are housed administratively along with Florida prepaid college program. So if you know Florida prepaid, we are leveraging off of their investment opportunities and their pool of investors to help keep all of our costs lower. And that being said, my son Sean was the first one to get an account in the state of Florida, which is pretty exciting and still gives me goosebumps. So, the whole premise behind ABLE is that you are able to save without losing any of those benefits. By law, Medicaid cannot look at money in your ABLE account when determining assets for eligibility. So you can go above that $2,000 asset limit that they have if the money's in the ABLE account. You also get to save tax-free. The money is tax-free going into the account, but also when you take it out of the account. So you're not going to have to pay either way. And I tell everybody, I'm not paid by ABLE, so I feel free in being able to say it is actually the easiest website I've ever used for anything for my son. It did literally take me 15 minutes to set up his account. I can go in 24 hours a day, change anything that I need to on it. Everything that I found has been very, very easy, and if I get stumped on something on the website, they have a toll-free number that I can use to answer questions. Okay. So everybody always wants to know, what can you use the money for? A qualified disability expense. So what is that? Anything that falls into these categories. So the first one, I tell people health. That might be something that your health insurance isn't going to cover. For my son who does occupational and speech therapy, when we hit our limit of therapies, I can pay for his therapies out of his ABLE account as opposed to paying it out of pocket straight to the therapist. We can use it for housing. I've talked to individuals who are using to help pay rent either on their own or to their family members. You can use it for assistive technology and support devices. If you use a tablet for communication, if you use a cell phone, your cell phone plan can be included as one of the expenses out of your ABLE account. It's a very broad description of what you can use the money in the account for, and we did that purposely because we know that everybody has different needs for what they need to be able to use their money for. What's appropriate for my son may not be appropriate for you or your loved one. So you need to have that flexibility. It also gives you a lot more flexibility than a special needs trust might. A special needs trust is very specific on what you're able to allocate and use the money for coming out of it. ABLE is a little bit more flexible, excuse me. Able United will never audit your account, but the IRS may. And the IRS is able to audit it because it's tax-free money. So since they're not getting the income from any of the interest that's growing in the account, they could come and say, hey, what did you spend that $200 for? Oh, okay, we had to get a new tablet to replace Sean's communication on his iPad. Yeah.
Along the line, you're talking about how do you track receipts and how do
Yes.
you do that?
Yeah, so the best thing is to keep receipts, keep a separate file, whether you want to scan them and keep them digitally or keep a hard copy file. You will want to keep receipts for anything that you do as an expenditure. If it's something that you may not get a physical receipt from, I've heard people keeping a logbook or their own receipt book. So if it's rent that you're paying and you may not get a receipt from your landlord for it, just keep track of it so that if the IRS ever does decide to come and audit it, you'd be able to say, okay, on June 1st, I paid this amount of rent to this, to this person. And that's the best way to do it. So it is one of the things I know we do keep records, of course, of all my son's medical issues, which are extensive. It's the same thing. You need to just keep track of what you're spending the money on so that if IRS were ever to come back, Able United will not come back. They will not come and ask you what you're spending your money on. That's not part of what their purview is. They're there to just help you get the account established and to help gain an investment. One of the things I point out to people is funeral and burial expenses. A lot of people have them set up in prepaid and special needs trust. Able accounts, you are able to pay any of those additional expenses, or if you haven't prepaid, pay down the account. This is very important. It's your money that you've put into the account. You want to expend whatever you have left in it. I'll explain that in just a second. I tell everybody my son's gonna have the biggest funeral you've ever seen. Everybody's invited to the wake because there won't be a penny left in his Able account when he goes.
When you say that, why don't you want to leave anything in there? Where will the money go?
Give me 1 second and I'll explain it, okay? All right, any questions on any of the kind of broad categories? So there are currently 36 states that have Able accounts that are available. Florida is one of the states where you do have to be a Florida resident to open the account. The account is in the name of the individual with the disability. So our account is Sean's Able account. Because he's a minor, I'm the administrator for the account. He's not legally old enough to make any financial decisions. And even if he was, once he hits 18, I'll be his guardian advocate because intellectually he's not going to be capable of making those decisions on his own. You can only have one Able account nationwide. There are other states that have national accounts. Ohio and Virginia were two of the early states that have national accounts. That means I could open an account in one of those states. One of the last slides I'm going to show you is going to list resources. One of the best resources that I refer people to is the Able National Resource Center. It is a clearinghouse that takes information on Able accounts nationwide. They host webinars frequently on Able accounts, what's new and what's happening with them, how things are progressing. But they also give you a side-by-side comparison of the Able accounts in different states. Okay. So in Florida, if you want to open an Able United account, you must be a Florida resident. Nationally, the rule is you must have received the diagnosis of the disability by the age of 26. So that means if the onset of the disability happened after 26, you would not be eligible. But if you were diagnosed prior to the age of 26, you are eligible. There's currently legislation in Congress right now to raise that age to 46, which was our original intention. I have an autoimmune disease that could have caused me to have more severe disability at a younger age. And so that was part of what I contributed to it, was that we know that there are people who were diagnosed as adults who become disabled. They need to have the flexibility to have the same type of savings mechanism. And then the disability has to be severe, and this is the Social Security Administration's definition of severe. It means that it's going to last for more than 1 year. If you go to the Able United website, they have a tool called the Eligibility Wizard, and it will walk you through the different steps to determine if you're eligible for an Able account And it will also link you to the Social Security Administration's webpage that lists the different disabilities. It's pretty all-encompassing. I have not come across anyone yet who has had a disability that was not qualifying. And so one of the things I tell people too is before you open your account, go on the ABLE National Resource Center website, look at a couple different states, compare. They'll tell you if there is a minimum fee or a fee to open the account. It'll tell you what the annual fees are on the accounts. It will tell you if there's a minimum contribution, and you'll be able to see how the accounts compare state to state so that you can look at what's the best option for you. Because there are some people that are living in different, I talked to somebody who was living in California who had one of the Ohio accounts because he realized that was a better fit for what he needed to be able to use it for. Okay. You self-certify that you have the qualifying disability. Able United is not going to ask for any documentation from a physician that you have a disability that qualifies for an ABLE account. I provided the name of the physician that was treating my son when he was diagnosed at birth. I never saw that doctor again. I didn't know that doctor's name. I would have to really go through 15 years of paperwork to try to find it. But I was able to use the pediatrician who was his pediatrician as a baby and as a young child, and that's sufficient for it. That's my son's one. That's the day that we were able to go to the Tallahassee, the state capitol, and do a press conference and talk about our story a little bit and why we wanted to open the accounts. So everything is done through a secure website. You cannot go down the street to your local bank and open an ABLE account. I've had a lot of people who have been confused about that, and the people in the banks have no idea what you're talking about. It's all done online. It is a secure website, so you will have access, as I said, to it 24/7. It has to be for the benefit of the individual with disability. I can't open an account, say it's for Sean, and then use the money for myself. Okay. And I think most people get that. This is for, what his needs are going to be, not what I might have. So, this has changed. We haven't gotten the slide updated yet. But originally, if you open an ABLE account and received Medicaid benefits after opening the account, when the person who's listed on the account passed away, Medicaid could be one of the creditors to get money back out of the account for the amount of the benefits paid. Okay, so what does that mean? Sean doesn't get Medicaid right now. But if he was, and I had opened the account, and he passed away, Medicaid would be listed as somebody who could have a claim on assets left in his account equal to the benefits he received from the time he opened it. What's changed, and that's why I say you want to spend down anything that's in the account. That's my money. That's not Medicaid's money. Medicaid didn't put a single penny into his ABLE account. They're not getting a single penny back. The big change this spring was the Florida legislature put a prohibition on Medicaid from going after any ABLE account assets for 1 year. So that started in the spring, and that means that anybody who passes away in this next year, who may have been receiving Medicaid benefits, Medicaid cannot come back and ask for any of that money back. What I've heard from the folks in Tallahassee is that during the next legislative session in Tallahassee next spring, that's expected to be made permanent, which means that Medicaid will have no claims ever on ABLE account money in the state of Florida. This is a big deal. So as I said, this is your money. This is your money that you are investing. This is not state money that's going in. Even if it's money that you receive as SSI benefits, it's still your money to invest and to use the way that you want to. Okay? They don't get to get paid back. That originally was included in the federal legislation because we had to be able to balance the cost of potential investments against the loss of revenue to the IRS. Very convoluted and tricky. But it's one of the things that has held people back from opening accounts because they said, I don't want to open an ABLE account because I don't want Medicaid to get that money. at the end. It's part of why the funeral and burial was put in there, was so that you could spend any remaining funds in the account. But now that the Florida legislature has acted on this, Medicaid's not going to be able to touch it for this year, and my expectation is next year they will make that permanent. I talked to the executive director of Able United. We were at Family Cafe 2 weeks ago, and it's not official, but their discussions with members of the House and Senate in Florida was that this was going to go through.
So, the passing, then that money would then go,
So it goes to whoever's named as the beneficiary on the account.
that's on there now.
So I'm the beneficiary on Sean's account, and then my husband would be there. You have to name one beneficiary. If we both were, say we both had an accident, my family got wiped out, it would go through the court system. Whoever was next in line, according to the law, would receive those benefits. Any outstanding bills that might be left in his estate would get paid out of the ABLE account, and then if there's any money remaining after that, it would go to whomever is next in line. This is a really big deal, and I tell everybody this because it's huge that the Florida legislature has done this. Not every state is doing this. And that's something that I point out, because when I say look at the ABLE plans in other states, you want to look at everything closely. If I were to open a plan in another state that did not have this provision, Medicaid could come after our money. Okay. So, as I said, it's all done online. Anybody can open the account. If the individual with a disability is able to manage and operate their funds, we know that there are many, many people who can. Absolutely, if they're legally old enough to do it and can manage it, they're able to do it. If it needs to be somebody else, a parent, a guardian, somebody who has power of attorney, they can open it on behalf of the individual. You know, for me, of course, I'm managing Sean's account, and I would decide at this point how any funds are going to be dispersed. Okay, he's 15. He would spend all his money on ice cream and Disney. He would not save that money for future use. It really is easy. Their website, I was able to find every piece of information, and I was a beta tester for it before the accounts went live. I went through every page and every link, and I made notes with it. This isn't working, or this is confusing, and clarify that, and they've gone back. Their customer service has been great in listening to concerns of people who are calling in or emailing them about how things are working and what they might need to change. And I've noticed a few minor tweaks and changes, but they really have done, I told them, they've done a great job with getting it up and running. So, yes.
If, who knows, something changes in Florida, we lose you and the legislature loses their money, and can you transfer, can you move the
Yep,
account?
you can move, even if you just decide that you want to move, you like Tennessee's plan better, you can roll over from ABLE account to ABLE account anywhere nationwide. I talked to a family a couple months ago at another conference that they had come from Michigan. They had started their account in Michigan. They decided when they moved to Florida, they liked Florida's plan better. They were able to roll it over. They contacted the ABLE folks in both states, and they were able to transfer that money electronically. A little bit of paperwork, but they were able to get it up and running without too much difficulty. So who can contribute and how much? So currently you can contribute up to $15,000 a year unless the individual with a disability is working. If they were employed, you can contribute an additional amount of money up to the current federal poverty limit, which means just under $27,000. Florida is working on how to implement this right now. This just came about as part of the tax law changes that got signed into law in January of this year. So it went from being able to contribute $14,000 a year to $15,000, and adding the employment provision. I have been told that by the end of this summer, they should have the employment piece worked out. So what happens is when the federal law gets passed, because each state is administering their own ABLE accounts and their plans, they have to decide how to comply with the federal law, so it takes a little bit of time. Who can contribute? Anybody can contribute. You can set up, in ABLE United, you can set up a one-time contribution as you want to. So I set up Sean's account the first time. I put in money to get the account started, one and done, that was it. Now I have a monthly contribution that goes in. It's a small amount every month. I have a set date that it's going in. I get an email notification when it goes in. I looked at what it would cost for my family of 4 to go out and have dinner, and I said, that's how much we're putting in per month. I do not have to think about it. I can stop that at any time. I can change the amount that's going in if I want to do that. I did a webinar recently, and I had the lady who was running it say, what about parents who are on a budget? I said, you could set up, put $5 a month in if you want. Okay? Because there's not a minimum amount you have to contribute regularly, it really is up to you and where your circumstances are. If you decide that that money that I'm putting in every month, we've got a lot of medical bills coming up, he's got to have surgery again, so we're going to stop for a couple months, get those clear, and then we'll pick it back up. The other thing I love is that friends, family members, organizations can contribute. My son is 15, and for heaven's sakes does not need another toy in his life. So I've told his grandparents, contribute to his ABLE account.
How?
So it's all done online. I provide the link to them, to his account, the information for his account. They can go in, they enter their bank account information for a one-time contribution, and they can contribute. As long as you don't hit that $15,000 a year total contributions, you're good. So one of the questions that I get a lot is, what if you have money from an estate or an inheritance coming? And it's a larger amount of money. Okay, if it's gonna be more than $15,000, ABLE account may not be the best mechanism for you. You might then want to look at a special needs trust. And that's going, I'll get to you in 1 second. That's going through a lawyer. That is a legal document. You have to pay a lawyer to set up a special needs trust. And it depends. I've heard anywhere from $3,500 to $7,000. Okay, it all depends. I have a good friend who's a special needs trust lawyer who runs a really great event twice a year called Lowdown on Law, where she talks about special needs trust, guardianship, guardian advocacy. I come and talk about ABLE. We talk about all the different pieces on planning for the future for the individual with a disability. And one thing she says is she was very leery about opening an ABLE account for her child. She is a lawyer. She already has special needs trust. She didn't trust that ABLE was going to benefit her child. She now is one of our biggest advocates. She's decided that ABLE was going to work in conjunction with their special needs trust. It's different tools in the toolbox that you have to help your loved one or yourself. Okay, you have a question?
Can you transfer money from an existing active first-party special needs trust to an ABLE account?
My understanding is that it has to go into the bank account first, and then it can go ABLE. So the only direct transfer right now is ABLE account to ABLE account. They're working on rollovers from other 529 plans, so the prepaid college plans. If you already have one of those set up, that's supposed to be coming. But right now, that money would have to go into a bank account, and then it can go into the ABLE account.
It is in a bank account,
It
but the
can
bank
be-
account is a special needs trust bank account.
So yes, absolutely,
So
it
you
could go
send
in.
that account number and they
Yep,
put it in.
and I'll do it directly. You have a question?
That answer is, can you have both simultaneously?
Yes. Yeah, and I talk to families, it really depends on your particular situation and what works best for you. Part of the reason that we started ABLE accounts was Steve Beck, who the accounts are named for, who was one of the dads sitting at that kitchen table, had just opened an account, a special needs trust for his daughter. He paid $5,000 to do it. He goes, I know not every family can afford to do that. We have to have a way for individuals who don't have that type of money and that access to be able to still save money. There are people who only have, right now, we only have an ABLE account because we haven't been at the point where we have enough funds to be able to do a special needs trust. So I tell everybody, you really have to look at what your individual situation is. If you have a lot of concerns, go and talk to a financial planner or go and talk to an attorney who specializes in estate planning and special needs trust and get their take on it.
besides lump sums of estates moving around and that stuff, in broad strokes, I'm not asking legal advice, when is it, are there other situations where it's obvious that you really need to have the special needs trust? Because this seems to really be very practical, real world access.
And I will admit, I'm not that knowledgeable in special needs trust. What I've learned, I mostly learned from my friend who is the attorney who does it, and what I've learned from the attorneys that have co-presented when I have. And that is not only the larger lump sums, but when you need a legal document that offers those protections that a special needs trust can do. When it is a more narrow scope of what you're going to expend the funds on. It's just a whole different beast than the ABLE accounts.
Is there anything that is is there anything that you, just off the top of your head, I know I'm asking particulars, but is there stuff that the special needs can fund that ABLE can't?
It depends on how, it really, again, it's a case-by-case basis. It depends on how you write it. And what the funds are gonna be expended on, because that's part of the trust. The special needs trust is you're determining how and for what those funds are gonna be expended on. Now, my understanding, but again, super layman terms, my understanding is that it still has to be a qualified disability expense for the benefit of the individual with a disability, which holds true with ABLE accounts also. That he is going to gift his sister money out of his ABLE account. He also could not decide to go and gamble that money at the Hard Rock Casino or eat to get himself there. Same kind of thing with special needs trusts. Special needs trusts are much narrower in some ways in that they are very specific on who is going to administer that money. At this point right now, my husband can have access to Sean's account and expend the funds out of the account. The special needs trust is naming a trust, naming somebody to do that. So in some ways, it's more open in the amount of money that can go in and how you can write it. Because you can be very specific and say, I want Sean to have a 1-week vacation every year. The special needs trust is gonna pay for it. It will pay for his transportation, his lodging. It will pay for a respite provider to come with him. It can be that detailed. The ABLE account's not gonna be that way. I hope that helps.
This sounds like an account for the rest of us.
Yes.
That's what it feels like.
It really is, and because it's something that you can do on your own, and I think have some comfort and confidence that I have learned enough about it by going on the website, by coming and listening to me, by looking at the information that's out there to be able to manage it. Special needs trust, you're not gonna be able to do on your own. Yes.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say the big difference, we have an active first party, I'm the trustee, I'm writing checks every month. And it was written fairly broadly to enhance the quality of her life. So I don't see anything that it can't pay. The big difference is that ABLE can pay for housing. Special needs trust cannot pay for any kind of housing or food. So you have to be careful there, because rents are high. So there's some real advantage, plus Medicaid will take the ending on this, the first part of the special needs trust. So those are the big differences.
And one of the other things, this was what, part of what also was the foundation for ABLE, and I tell people all this time, that is Sean's money. A special needs trust is not his money.
Right.
It can't be in his name because it would count as assets in his name. And then he would start losing Medicaid. This is his money though, really. And to me, that's huge. To be able for him to have that pot of money that if he were able to, and who knows, he may mature greatly in the next few years and be able to manage his money. For him to be able to decide, I want to save for my own house. And for us not to say, no, we're going to decide for you how to use that, or we're going to take away your benefits that you're entitled to.
So let's say a grandparent, we're gonna give them a check for $100 or $500 or something for Christmas. How do they get that? How do you get that into the ABLE
Okay,
account?
So if my parents were to write a check for Sean's birthday for $100, I would put it in my bank account and then make a one-time contribution from my account into his ABLE account.
So you can, but
Just
should the check then at that point be written to you, so you can do that?
Yes,
not
that's
to
the
his name?
easiest, that's the easiest way. You
Right.
they can't cash a check into the ABLE account, because it's an investment account, and the way that it works is all
It's
electronic
kinda
funds
like a-
transfer.
It's not really a bank account, it's more like a
Yeah.
Roth IRA.
Yes,
Right,
so-
that you're kinda.
Yep,
How is that?
so that's my
monitored?
next screen, thank you.
Who monitors that of what you're taking the money out for? How does that transaction happen?
I will get to that, give me 1 minute, let me go through this, and that's gonna come up when we go into disbursements and how they go. So it's very similar to if you have a 401k or other investment account, your money's being invested, so it's not a traditional checking savings account where you're gonna get blank checks to write on your own, or you're gonna get a debit card. It's money that is being invested like you would in a 401k. This is the one place that I tell people, do a little bit of time thinking about how you want that money to be used in the account and how you want it to grow. You can change your contributions up to twice a year in the account. It's all done online. Do you have somebody who's maybe an adult who needs to be able to access that money more quickly and you want to really protect it? You're gonna wanna go with something more traditional and conservative. Sean was 13 when we opened the account. I'm not gonna be using that money. I'm wanting it to grow, for him to either go onto a college program or be able to use it for his future medical expenses. I'm a little more aggressive. He's got a mix between moderate and growth right now that's performing exactly where I want to. I told myself I would give it 6 months, see how the money grew. If I was happy with it, I would leave it and we just keep going. If I'm not, or things change and I decided, whoa, stock market's gone crazy, I'm not comfortable with that amount of risk with his money, we're gonna go something more conservative on investments. Again, I know this much about financial planning, honestly. Okay. Yeah, like, not my strong suit. But I've been very comfortable. So they're using, Vanguard and BlackRock are the investment firms that they're using. Again, we're leveraging off of Florida prepaid, being able to get lower rates for any cost on the investment. Very, very low, because they have a huge pool of investors through Florida prepaid. If it was Able United on its own, it would be much more expensive. But because we're all kind of working together, we're able to utilize the investment opportunities and companies that they have to keep things lower. Okay. Again, keep your documentation. You can withdraw your money at any time. You can request up to 2 paper checks a month, or as many electronic fund transfers as you want. If Sean was enrolled in a post-secondary program out at UCF, and I wanted to pay his tuition or his books or anything else he needed, I could set up to expend money out of his account directly to UCF. If I had a landlord that I was gonna need to give a paper check, all I had to do is request it. They'll make the check out to the landlord and then Able will send it directly to that person. Okay. Again, it has to be a qualified disability expense, so no gambling, no gifts, monetary gifts to other people. One of the new things that's coming up too, they're gonna have by the end of the summer, I believe, early fall, they're going to have a prepaid card. So like a prepaid MasterCard, Visa card that you would get, that money would be loaded onto, not a straight debit card. And the reason that they haven't done that was because there was concern that it would be used for things that were not qualified disability expenses. So because you do need to be diligent about record keeping, they want to make it so that you might have a little bit more access and ease than an electronic funds transfer or paper check and have that prepaid card, but not as much flexibility as you might have with a debit card. This is the best news I'm going to give you all day. There's no application fee to set up your account. There is no minimum that you have to contribute. to the account. Florida is one of only 2 states in the country that does not have an application fee and an annual fee. That's huge. There literally is nothing for you to lose by opening an account. You don't have to put money in it right away. If you decide, I'll open it, but I'll wait until we get a bonus check at the end of the year, and then I'll put money in. You can do that. You decide to wait for a year, that's okay too. If you choose to get a paper statement every year, they'll charge you the $10. So the bottom one is where I say we're leveraging off of Florida Prepaid and their relationship with Vanguard and BlackRock. That little tiny percentage is based off of the amount of money that you have in the account. They'll charge you just to manage the money and invest it for you. That'll go right back out. But hopefully you're earning enough that you're not even going to notice that small amount. So the whole thing with the annual fees is that Able United waived them for the first year. I was able to go to their board meeting. Congressman Crenshaw, Representative Rodriguez, and a couple of their board members were there. And we were talking about what was good about Able United. And they said, because we're one of only 2 states, we can tell people that you're not gonna get charged a $25 or $50 annual fee like some of the other states. That's why I say, go back to the Able National Resource Center website, compare the different plans, and see which states are gonna charge you a fee. Because it may seem more attractive at first, but then when you realize you're gonna lose $25 a year out of the account, that's your money, just for having the account, it makes a difference. Excuse me. This is my resource page. So, again, this is the one that I love. Able United also runs regular webinars, usually every month or so. They'll run through what's new and what's happening with it. If you don't take a picture of this, all this information is also listed on the ableunited.com website, which is on the back of that little quick start guide that I gave you. That information is there. Under the resources, they have this so that you can go in and look at what the options are that are out there. There's also the toll-free number for customer service. If after you leave here and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to ask about such and such, or something pops up to you, their customer service staff is really great. I've had very good interactions with everybody that I've dealt with Able United. And again, that's a huge thing as a parent who doesn't have a lot of time. I don't want to spend an hour on the phone with them to get a simple answer like I would with the insurance company, which I've done repeatedly, time and time again.
When did the first account get open?
It was July 1st of 2016. That was Sean's account. So I actually opened it a little early because they wanted me to test out the site. Congressman or State Senator Andy Gardner, who is from Orlando, who was the president of the Florida State Senate for many years, has a son with Down syndrome. I know his wife because we've done a lot of work together. He was the one that was instrumental in helping Florida to get our plan up and running. So the federal law got passed in December of 2014. In January of 2015, Senator Gardner introduced the legislation in the Florida legislature to get the Able United accounts up and running. That's why we were the 4th state to be able to go live with the accounts. It was something that he believed in so strongly. When they were looking at who was going to be their first account holder, his wife knew that I had worked on this early on, and they had actually offered to let Camille and Andy open the first account for their son because that was one of his things, and they started talking to me and realized that I had moved from Virginia I grew up in Central Florida, and my family's here, and we'd come back so that we could be closer to family. And once we talked to them a little bit about my background and what it was, they were very generous and offered to let us be the first to do it.
With the flexibility, What concerns do you have for abuse at this point? We're early and it takes a while for the
It takes
fungus
a
and
while.
lichens to grow.
Really, the responsibility is on whoever's administering the account. So yes, there could be abuse. It's not that much money though. So if you're paying $15,000 a year, yes, there is the potential for abuse, but it's gonna come back on whoever's administering. So if it's not the individual with the disability who's able to manage their own account, it needs to be someone who's trustworthy to be able to look out for them and do the right thing for them.
The reason I ask, of course, is because when abuse happens, then in comes the legislation,
To
the
change
rule books start to get real thick.
Yeah.
You just start to have.
One of the things that I didn't mention is, I talked about the contribution. So there's no upper limit on what you can put into an ABLE account other than the.
We're above 100,000.
No. Here's what that 100,000 is. That 100,000 is when you would start losing SSI benefits. It doesn't mean that you can't have $102,000 in your account. You can. You're just not gonna get the same level of SSI benefits, and why is that? You don't want it to be a tax shelter for the wealthy. If you have $100,000 in an ABLE account, do you need those SSI benefits? And good luck getting to that 100,000 anytime soon when you're only putting $15,000 to $27,000 a year in it. That's gonna take you a little while to build it, because the employment thing is brand new. That's just was enacted in January this year. So most states haven't been able to actually get it implemented so that people can take advantage of it. And part of the reason they want to do that too is because they didn't want individuals who are working to continually have to spend down their own checking account to keep their Medicaid benefits. You guys have probably heard about that. Yeah. I had a gentleman with Down syndrome who's an adult who was working full-time or part-time in Virginia before ABLE came about, had a job that he loved, worked there for 10 years. They loved him, he loved the job, he was an excellent employee, but he had a supervisor who had to keep track of his hours as an adult and tell him to go home because now he worked too much this week.
Yeah.
Now how insulting is that? None of us would expect to be told, go home, you can't work anymore this week. And so, but they said, you're gonna hit your limit. You're gonna have too much and we don't want you to lose any of your benefits. So now he can take that money and put it in his ABLE account. Yes, that $100,000 cap is there only for Social Security benefits. If you're receiving them, then you would learn it. But there is no upper cap on what can actually be in the ABLE account. There's a lot of misunderstanding about that. And that's, some people who are doing Social Security say, oh, well, you can only have $100,000. No. I could have $200,000, I'm not gonna get SSI benefits, but I can have that much money. Now, is that the best use of my money? No. If I have that money, I probably should have it in a special needs trust or a combination of special needs and ABLE. And that's why I tell people it really is such an individual thing. You have to look at what your situation is, what you need the money for, when you need it. Yes.
I did the webinar and we said that it was some time ago when it first rolled out.
Mhm.
They said 418,000 was the maximum we have. That may have changed.
It may have changed. That's not something that I've been told, that there is no upper limit except where Social Security benefits are concerned. Now, that being said, while I'm very knowledgeable about ABLE accounts, I'm not an expert. So it is possible that I may be wrong on it.
It'll be a while before I even worry about that.
Right. I know, we're nowhere close. My little bit a month is not gonna even get us to that 15,000 a year. But, for me, it's at least something knowing that I'm putting something aside for my son. It's able to grow. If I need it now, I can use it, but I can also just let it sit and not think about it. Okay. All right, so this is my only sales pitch. I'm not a salesperson. Okay. So ABLE United says, if you use my code, you're going to get entered into their quarterly drawing that ranges from $250 to $1,000, and they will make a $50 contribution to Sean's account. Awesome. I don't get paid. I volunteer. This is the only benefit that I get. Other than, and I've told them this, the benefit for me is coming and talking to people about ABLE because it's something that I'm so passionate about. I don't even care if you use the code. It makes no difference to me. If an account, use the code, don't use it. That's all right. If you want it, it's there. I appreciate it if you do. We haven't gotten rich off of Sean's ABLE contributions. We had a little bit.
Too bad.
We're not gonna get rich. But I told them too, I will always come out and I will talk to people about it because it's something that I've worked on for so long. And I believe so strongly about it that I will talk to anybody at any point.
You mentioned lowdown on law.
So lowdown on the law, okay. So my friend Catherine Davey is an estate planning attorney who happens to have a daughter with Down syndrome. She was doing estate planning for 20 years before her daughter was born. So she says, well, this is perfect. I've trained all my life for this. I know what's going on. She does these things through the Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida, dsacf.org. And twice a year they do it. So April and then September. It costs $15. It's in Maitland, right off 1792, at Church of the Good Shepherd. They donate space to be able to run it. She gets a judge from one of the local counties. She gets local attorneys who work in guardianship, guardian advocacy, and estate planning, and financial planners, and me, generally, to come in and talk about ABLE. They provide a little breakfast and a lunch for your $15. They walk you through, she gives you a packet of information that walks you through every step that you need to be able to become a guardian or guardian advocate for your child with a disability. When Sean turns 18, regardless of his diagnosis, he is legally an adult with all the same rights under the law as you or me, which means he can enter into legal contracts, financial agreements such as a credit card, make his own medical decisions, which means if he does not want me in the room when the doctor is in there, he can tell me to go away, which he does frequently at home anyway. Not a good situation for me, because in addition to Down syndrome, he also has chronic renal failure, so we're facing kidney transplant in the next several years. So, that being said, no, he's not going to be kicking me out anytime soon, so before he turns 18, I will be going and getting fingerprinted to become his guardian advocate, and I will go in front of the judge when he turns 18, and we will have a party, and I will still be in control. And it's something a lot of people don't understand. I've talked to caregivers who have adults who have not. I mean, I'm talking adults in their 50s, who a sibling is their caretaker and still making all decisions legally. The law says that person is an adult until you go into a court of law, take away those rights from them. They can go have a boyfriend and give him all their money. They can tell you not to do something.
So I just want to comment on that because especially in my role, I a lot of times will get patients, parents calling me and their kids are 25, 30 years old. I can't talk to them unless I have a legal document saying that I can talk to them. It does not matter their level of cognition. So it is very, very important that if you need to pursue any type of medical power of attorney, guardianship, what have you, whatever it is that you decide you need to do, to go ahead and get that done, because there are situations where if we're talking about anything like this, if that particular patient is over the age of 18 and I don't have any documentation, I cannot talk to that parent. There is absolutely nothing that, as in healthcare or in any other type of legal setting, that we can do unless there's legal documentation stating that. So I just want to.
And the great thing about when Catherine runs this, and she's done it for a couple of years now, and for her, it's like me doing this and coming to talking, goes for her, it's her mission is to educate people about what their options are. If you have a child in that situation as they get older. And the difference between guardianship, which is full rights, and a guardian advocate who may still, Sean, I'm fully intending him to go vote when he turns 18. I'm not going to tell him who to vote for. He has been voting with me in every election since he was this big. So he's going to be able to go and do that. But is he going to be able to make his medical decisions? No. No. Is he going to be able to make financial decisions? Not at this point, and probably not for a long time. So there are areas that I know that I need to be able to still do what is in his best interest. But with that day, the Lowdown on Law Day, they go through a scenario where They walk through every step that you need to go through that process. They have the judge there, they do some role playing. The judges and attorneys all donate their time. Over lunch, they do roundtable discussions. They'll talk about special needs trust and estate planning. If you want, you just kind of go to wherever it's most important for you. I think it's one of the best things that we've ever done. The Down Syndrome Association runs it, but it's open to anybody who wants to come. And I'm happy to, Shannon, I'll email you when they don't have a date yet, I don't think, for the fall, but I'll email you so that you can get it out to your members, because I think that it might be something that would be useful. I've done it at least twice where I've sat through the half day session, and each time I've learned something. But you know, you get everything you need for every step of the process, because it does take a little bit of planning to do that.
To feed off on both of that too, because you want a court date, because it will be a court date, on or as close to the 18th birthday of the individual, so that there is no gap.
Yes.
So then legally, if he signs a car loan in that month time frame, he is liable for that $60,000 car loan.
I use the credit card example too. Sean can fill out a credit card application, get approved, go spend all his money at Disney.
But you can go back there.
At any point in time,
Yes,
you can obtain,
at any
as long as
point.
you can provide verifiable documentation of a lifelong disability.
Yes.
Medical records are destroyed after 7 years. So you have to go as far back into his history that you have and start presenting the reasoning as to why, because he has to be proven that he cannot handle or she cannot handle their personal scenario.
And what they do is you go through you actually have to go get fingerprinted and background check. It's a level 2 background check. If you have another level 2 background check for work or somewhere else, doesn't matter. This is a standalone check just for this purpose. So it takes a little bit of time to do that, and a little bit of time because there's initial paperwork you have to file with the clerk of the court and to be able to get your court date. So, you know, you have to give yourself a few months before. If it's after, it's no big deal. Adult siblings who are caring for their brother or sister with a disability who are in their 40s and 50s, and they have no idea that they need to do this. They've just always made every decision.
This is very expensive to do. Very high.
I don't know that there is anything but a few minor court costs. You do not have to hire a lawyer to do it. Catherine, one of the things that she's working on is working with the different the different judges in the counties and educating them about this process. The couple of judges that have come in on lowdown day, they're like, we make it fun. It is not a scary thing. They're like, we have a party, we've got cake afterwards. You know, we invite the young adults up, let them bang the gavel. They try to make it as easy as possible. You will have an advocate for the individual with a disability who will be their representative. They'll meet with them ahead of time. And that's because you are legally taking away their rights. They need to have somebody who's on their side, because again, it goes back to the protection, and you don't want somebody who is going to abuse that right. You need to have some protection outside who is trained and knowledgeable to be able to look out for their best interest. They'll interview the young person with a disability, make sure that everything that the court is being told is accurate. But they really do try to make it as easy a process as they can. But it does take a little bit of time because you're working in the court system.
You just have, it is yearly. You will have to update your guardianship that you're going to continue it on a yearly basis.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I'm sorry I went a little bit long, but I appreciate all the